Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
Where we read, well, no, we do read stuff, but we actually tell you guys about weird stuff.
We do read, also. I mean, we have scripts that we're reading from that we wrote.
I know, that's why I was like, we do read, but this is what we do. I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
We're awkward, and we're gonna go and tell you things.
Cool. What topic are you going to be covering this week, Robin?
I'm going to be going with a classic today, and it's going to be the Snallygaster of Maryland.
Oh, yeah. Classic. Everyone knows of the Snallagaster.
I don't know. It seems like a classic to me because I've heard of it before.
Right on.
But that's just because I play video games.
Video games. I'm going to be covering Centralia, which is the inspiration for Silent Hill.
And we've had so many people request it, like over and over and over again. So
Indeed. Here it comes. If you don't like it, hey, I did my best. So
I did my best.
I think you're going to be going first, but before we get going, I just want to ask you, because this is something I feel like we don't ask each other very often on the show. How are you, Robin? How are you doing?
Good. I don't know. I just started school today, so that sucks, but...
The beginning of your summer semester, correct?
Yep. Shit sucks. But it's the first day of in-class school, so that's really awkward.
It's been a year, right?
But, oh my God, has it? It's
Pretty
been
sure.
over a year. It's been over a year because at least in 2020, I still had a spring semester. We just ended it halfway.
Right.
Yeah. So this is been over a year now of not being in school.
So this was your first day back in the building.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And parking was great. There was nobody in the parking lot. It was awesome.
I feel like that's typically the case when it comes to summer semester because not everyone's there like it will be for fall.
Yeah, that's true.
But everyone put up your arms and send out your spirit ball energies.
Yeah, I gotta
spirit
pass
bomb
this
energies.
class, so...
Robin's going to pass this one and then the next ones and then be done with it. So let's all cross fingers and hope that happens. But I'm glad you're good. And
Yeah.
I'm glad things are going well. So good stuff.
And what about you? I feel like that was a way for you to be like, this was my day, or this is how
I don't
am.
ask people questions because I want to answer them. I just genuinely wanted to know how you are. I'm fine. Work is good. Podcast is good.
Oh, cool. All right.
Books are good. So.
Yeah, because you've been reading Wheel of Time.
Yeah, I'm reading Wheel of Time again. Pretty excited about the show that should be out soon. And,
I was going to say Wheel of Time podcast coming soon.
Yeah, I'm going to be
I
doing
don't know
a Wheel
what
of
it's
Time.
called.
I'm going to be doing a Wheel of Time podcast. Not a lot of details to announce on it yet, but.
Oh, okay. Have you guys got a name?
No, we haven't thought of a name.
Okay.
There's a lot of details we still have to hash out. There's a lot of stuff out there for Wheel of Time too. So there's going to be a bunch of names that we're going to pick and then go check and be like, well, never mind. So.
You know what you should name it?
What?
The Squeal of Time, because y'all be squealing over that show, you little beaches.
It's not the worst name I've heard ever, but it's pretty close. But all right, I believe you are going to be going first this episode.
All right, yeah,
I'm
gonna be going. I'm gonna be going first. Okay, so. All right. So I said it's a classic, the Snallagaster, right? And I know not a lot of people may have heard of it. It's called the Snallagasters, based in Maryland. I say Maryland, but it is a creature that's been seen in other parts of that general area. Some sightings even were in Washington, D.C., apparently, which it's really hard to believe, but reports are reports, right? But the internet, can never trust the internet. I'd actually only ever heard of this thing in Fallout 76.
I was wondering where you heard of it and what video game that I hadn't played.
Right. So before any of you folks are like, ew, it's horrible. Yes, I know. But my sister and I put a lot of time into that game. I know you didn't really play it as much as we did.
I played a lot in the beta. I actually enjoyed it despite the fact that it had its flaws. But when it came out, I was just too busy to play. So I just never wound up getting around to it. Yeah,
my sister and I put a lot of time into that game. We just love Fallout, even though it's nowhere near as good as Fallout 4, which is just chef's kiss. So good. The monsters in it, though, are pretty cool and fun for me, just because they're based on local legends in the area. So, like, the Snallygaster is actually in the game. It's really cool. And so, yeah, I'm going to cover that cryptid today. All right, so, according to the interwebs, early accounts of the creature date back to the 18th century. That is the 1700s, if you folks didn't know. I talked to someone earlier this week or last week where they were like, I was testing someone and asked them if they knew what when the 15th century was, and they're like, the 1500s? It's like, no.
It's always off by one.
Yeah.
Thanks to that 0 century when everyone had the double digits.
Oh yeah, double digits. I don't know why.
Why are you rooting for double digits?
I don't know.
Why did that get a woo?
I don't know. That's my age right now. Adam earlier was like, "What just popped?" I'm like, "Everything."
It sounded like her hips, but I didn't know if it was her hips, her knees, or her elbows.
All right, his shoulders, knees, and toes. Okay, apparently, that area of Maryland was settled by German immigrants in the 1730s. These settlers complained of being terrorized by an entity that they called the Snallygaster. That's probably wrong. My sister's over there being like, "That's not how you say it."
It didn't sound terrible, though.
Okay, I don't speak German, but it is German for quick ghost.
I was going to say, Geist is definitely ghost. Because poltergeist is angry ghost.
Shut the front door.
Yeah.
Today I learned. I didn't know
Today
that.
you learned for like the 40th time.
Oh, really?
I say it on this podcast all the time.
Okay, Adam always talks about that I'm an Etch-a-Sketch. It's true. I have the worst memory, period. It's awful. You could tell me how a movie's going to end months,
in advance,
and I won't remember it when the movie comes out. So anyway, they described this thing as being a mixed creature of sorts, like a chimera. It was half bird with the look of what seemed like a demon or a ghoul type thing.
I saw one of the pictures that you sent me of this thing.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of like a How to Train Your Dragon depiction of a dragon with a Cthulhu head that was terrifying.
So it's a bit of a reptile-looking creature with metallic-looking beak and razor-sharp teeth. The one I sent you is from a different... someone was like, this is what it looked like further on in time. But there's also the occasional mention of a tentacle or two. Sounds like it could be really sexy,
Who doesn't mind a tentacle or two?
This thing definitely didn't act sexy, though. So what it would do is it would swoop silently from the sky and carry off unsuspecting victims. So unless you find that sexy, it's definitely not sexy.
What if you walked around suspecting? Would it leave you be? You said unsuspecting
You're like, oh,
victims.
I'm suspecting you.
You're just staring at the sky, walking carefully, going, I'm suspecting. And it's like, all right, fine, whatever.
These early sightings were kind of described as a little bit vampiristic for some of them because there were bodies that would turn up that were like sucked of their blood. There's a term for that.
Exsanguination.
Yeah. So they would just be drained of their blood. So they kind of gave the credit to this creature as the one doing that. Could be a chupacabra, you never know. Different part of the country, but they would actually draw red 7-pointed stars, like to kind of ward off these creatures. And they are still seen on some local barns to this day, which I find to be absolutely interesting that some people just still have these things on their buildings.
Was that a ward for this specific creature or just for evil in general, do you think?
So you can actually see one of these 7-pointed stars.
I'm pretty sure I've seen them on barns before.
So you can actually see one of these in the transmutation circle in Full Metal Alchemist. I don't know if you've ever seen Full Metal. Oh my sweet Jesus.
You lived with me. You've lived with me for the last decade. You know I haven't seen this.
But we've watched the live action movie.
And it was so much better, I'm sure.
Get out. Okay.
Just like Death Note.
But they have like a 7-pointed star in that circle.
I mean, the 7-pointed star is 100% from Game of Thrones.
It's magical. This idea of using the 7-pointed star it's like a hex. It's magical. It has warding powers to it, which is why they use it. It's a ward against evil spirits in general, which is why they used it to protect themselves from this thing that they called a ghost, right? A quick ghost. So the evil spirit, so they're trying to protect against that.
As a side note, not to derail this, but do you think if you were to just sort of gather enough momentum behind the culture that is today, you could create a new one? Like, I've had good luck with this symbol. I think you all should use it. And maybe if people share enough on social media, I just want to get to the point where we're drawing dicks on everything to protect us from evil spirits.
No, that's why everybody was drawing the S's when you were growing up.
Is that what it was? Now it totally makes sense.
That's why everyone did it.
I'm pretty sure the wards were those fortune tellers. We always like, who will you marry? Blue. The stinky kid.
What else did everybody draw growing up? I just remember drawing the stupid S's on everything.
Dicks. That's the only other thing that
I
I
never
ever
drew those. But so the drawing of these 7-pointed stars is a tradition that they brought with them when they came to Pennsylvania and Maryland. So I think that's really cool.
My thing takes place in Pennsylvania as well.
Shut the front door.
Yeah. Pennsylvania episode. Not really. You already said yours is Maryland focused, but in the region in general.
So it seemed to have lost a little luster as time went by, because, you know, sometimes stories don't get passed down through generation to generation. But this terrifying legend was kind of brought back to life again in the 19th century, supposedly as a way to scare freed slaves.
And that would be the 1900s, correct?
That's the 1800s.
The 20th century? I thought
19th century.
I thought you said the 20th century.
No.
My bad.
But that's coming up. So, okay.
It's because I peeked at your thing. That's why.
Oh, stop looking at my shit. You always complain about me looking at your shit. You're stupid. Okay, so some legendary...
Not literally, everyone. We mean script when she says shit.
Oh, yeah, no. He doesn't literally look at my poop. He asks me to look at his sometimes, though.
Sometimes they're impressive.
Fuck. So some legendary cryptid was probably the least of their worries at the time. There were far more real, actual terrifying things that were happening in their lives. So it's like, that you're trying to tell us this stupid Snallagaster thing is supposed to be scary. Oh, we're good. You know. So then in the 19th century, between February and March of 1909, there were reported encounters with this beast of, quote, enormous wings, a long pointed bill, claws like steel hooks, and an eye in the center of its forehead. I don't know what other creature that could have been. Maybe a one-eyed bird. I don't know. But it seems odd for it to show up again in 1909 like that. The sound that it made was supposedly, it was said to be along the lines of a locomotive whistle. I don't know. I'm trying to think if I've ever heard a train whistle.
Growing up in Northwest Indiana, I've heard many a train whistle.
What does it sound like?
It's very high pitched. It's very fucking loud.
Is it like when the kettle goes off?
Yeah, it's similar to a kettle, but just imagine on a massive scale.
All right.
I'm not going to try and do it, but it's something like... not bad. It's like, whoo.
No, that's not it.
That's not a bad one either. That's more of a foghorn.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on the coast of Lake Michigan also, so
God damn it.
All my sounds are mixed together.
Okay. So accompanying that was a horribly sulfuric smell as well.
So demon. That's where my head goes immediately.
When
Sulfur,
you think of demon. Or sulfur is demon, yeah. Which is funny. I was watching Ghost Adventures the other day, and like they were talking about like sulfur smells in a basement somewhere, and they're like, "There's a demon." It's like other shit smell like sulfur.
It could also be sulfur, dog.
Yeah. Okay. So because of how popular this legend got, even the Smithsonian Institution, which is a huge institution here in America,
it's one of the biggest,
offered $100,000 for a reward if you could like hunt it and catch it, or kill it and get its hide.
A massive zoological discovery to find an actual cryptid.
Yeah. There were rumors that were spread that even the U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt contemplated postponing a safari in order to hunt the beast. But it did come out as a hoax. So some sources say it was a hoax. Some say that he actually did it. But supposedly it was a hoax perpetrated by the publisher and editor of a publication called Middleton Valley Register. So George C. Roderick and Ralph S. Wolfe kind of worked together to create this sensational story. And they wanted to boost the sale of their paper. So it's like...
what better way than to write a bunch of bullshit?
1,000-year-old fake news.
1,000-year-old? Really?
100-year-old fake news. Shit. I'm tired. School was today. My brain no working.
Shut up. You had one class.
All right. So in Frederick County, Maryland, this dragon-like creature is a pretty big staple. It's said to live deep in the caves of South Mountain. Their legends include tales of these silent swoops for farm animals and children. So it like silently just comes down, grabs whatever it wants. Some are adamant that this creature is real. And I mean, it's like the Mothman stuff, right? Everybody wants to believe Nessie. I want to believe she's real. Or it, whatever you want to identify as. They, you know. What's also an interesting side note is that these creatures kind of seem like the Thunderbird. I don't know if you've heard of Thunderbirds before.
I think I covered the Thunderbird.
Have you? Okay, it's said to have been this huge, giant creature, right? Told in Native American folklore. So some people link those two things together. I'm not sure if that's true, since most things I've heard about Thunderbirds are like them being icons of strength and power and things like that. But they do have to eat somewhere, you know? You never know what they're going to eat. Okay, maybe they did eat people. You never know. There's people out there that are like, you're freaking stupid. Yeah, I know. Okay, so supposedly the first sighting was by a man who operated a brick burning kiln or baking. It's like where you toss the bricks in to cure, pretty much.
Gotcha.
It's near Cumberland. And this creature was sleeping near this kiln. And when it woke up, it emitted a blood-curdling scream and flew away angrily. I don't know what flying away angrily looks like, but that's what they say.
Just flap your arms as hard as you can and scoff a bunch.
Maybe it had expressions, facial expressions that you could tell that it was angry, but I can't imagine what flying away angrily seems like. Maybe they flap their arms harder or wings harder than normal.
It's just what I said. I agree.
But, you never know. Okay. So in New Jersey, it was reported that its first footprints were found in the snow there. In West Virginia, it was said that a Snallagaster almost caught a woman near Scrabble. There was a report that it was found roosting in a farmer's barn and had laid an egg the size of a barrel in Sharpsburg.
Holy shit.
I mean, the sightings in New Jersey could be like the Jersey Devil, of course, because it came out around the same time.
JD was real, man. Yeah. I'm telling you.
But maybe they're all one creature. Maybe they're all the same thing.
You're saying you think the Snallagaster was the Jersey Devil?
I don't know. It could be.
It's the same region. It could be.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. If it laid an egg as big as a barrel, where's the egg? That's evidence.
We'll get there. All right. A man named Thomas C. Harbaugh from Casstown, Ohio, wrote into the Valley Register and stated that he saw a strange creature flying over his area, and it made a horrible screeching noise. He described it as having 2 huge wings, a large horny head, because who doesn't, and a tail approximately 20 feet long. Doesn't the Jersey Devil have a really long tail too?
It has a tail. I don't know if it's that long.
That being said, Harbaugh was actually a personal friend of Roderick's, one of the publisher for the Valley Register, and Harbaugh was also born and raised in Middleton, so probably a fake story.
Gotcha.
Yes. And then near Hagerstown, south of Middleton, it was sighted at a place called Lover's Leap, cute, flying over the mountains between Gapland and Burkittsville. And I've never been anywhere near Maryland. I've never been in this area, so all of this is just words to me, but they are real places. It supposedly laid another huge egg there. Lumberjacks came across it, perched high on a cliff. The egg was supposedly big enough to hatch a horse.
To hatch a horse.
The final sighting in Frederick County occurred in March of 1909. Apparently, as hard as it is to believe, 3 men, supposedly, fought the creature outside of a railroad station.
Fought it?
For about an hour and a half.
That's a long battle.
Before chasing it into the woods of Carroll County. If you're fighting something for an hour and a half, I feel like there would be lots of reports of a weird creature. These 3 guys are fighting this weird creature for an hour and a half.
If you're fighting it for that long, then clearly it's not like you're beating the shit out of it for 90 minutes. You would have some scratches. You'd be worse for wear for sure.
But especially outside of a railway station, you know what I mean? Like, there should have been other people around that were like, yo, what the fuck? You know what I mean? But it's not highly written about. There's no hardcore evidence.
The least likely thing in this entire scenario isn't them fighting a cryptid. It's them fighting a cryptid for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
90 minutes is a long time.
It's longer than an episode of television.
Yeah, it's literally like a comedy before, like, I don't know, 2005 when everything had to be over 2 hours.
It's a bad horror movie. If you see a horror movie,
88 minutes for sure.
Yeah. Bad. Okay. So there were no more sightings of the creature for 23 years, after which it showed up again. These first reoccurring sightings were said to be a bird seen just below South Mountain in Washington County. Because of this timeline, it was thought that the life expectancy of a Snallagaster was about 20 years, and these new sightings were the offspring of those that were sighted in 1909. Barrel-sized babies, baby!
Okay, well, everyone found these eggs, and then they did what with them? They just fucking left them there?
Yeah, you just leave them. What?
How stupid is that? There's a fucking reward from the Smithsonian for $100K for this thing.
For the hide of one.
Okay, cool. Oh, you wanted a hide? I have an egg. An egg with the hide inside, with the living creature wrapped around it.
Imagine a horse-sized egg, okay? Bigger than a horse. It can hatch a horse. So imagine a giant egg that
I'm
big.
imagining a fucking egg the size of my chair.
No, it's bigger than that.
Then there's no reason you wouldn't call someone and be like, found an egg.
It's big enough to hatch a horse. There were some sources that were like, it's as big as an elephant. It's like,
Everyone thought bigger was better.
Yeah.
And clearly longer was better, too. Fought it for an hour and a half. You're full of shit. You screamed and ran away.
But imagine carrying a horse down a mountain.
Okay, cool. It's big enough to hatch a horse. That doesn't mean there's a horse inside it. And plus, what I'm saying is you would call people to come and get the damn egg. One person already had it in their fucking barn. You just throw a padlock on that thing. The battle's over with the bird. And then you have the authorities come and take it away.
Okay, so the Valley Register requested that anybody who saw the creature take a good look at it and get the most accurate and detailed description possible. For science, of course. After this, Charles F. Maine, some sources said Martin, was an ice cream entrepreneur, and Edward M. Leiter soon reported having seen the creature flying about 25 feet above them in the vicinity of Braddock Heights. They claimed that the wingspan for this creature was 12 to 14 feet, and at times they tossed out tentacle-like arms like an octopus, which is the picture that I sent you, and then pulled these things back in like a weird tongue. Not only that, it changed color several times, at first black, then white. Some say that it's just black, kind of like, How to Train Your Dragon. What's his name? Toothless?
Of course.
And then the glistening sun made it look white.
It sounds like a dragon octopus hybrid, and it's awesome.
So though their descriptions are said to have matched those published the week before, they could just be people that were like, oh yeah, I saw the same exact thing. You know what I mean? And even if you saw something that was different entirely, if you had read that description in the paper a week before, wouldn't it be possible that your brain was like, no, it's exactly like what you saw in the paper. You know what I mean? Because that's happened before when it comes to lots of true crime. People say that, oh yeah, I saw this person that I saw in the newspaper or whatever, even though it's not that person.
Right.
I don't know if I'm making sense. Some people might understand with my train of thought here, but do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, you're kind of all over the place with the story and the description, but what you're saying is because people read this, if they saw pretty much anything, they're going to be like, I saw exactly that thing.
Right.
Like the UFO thing when it came to the Battle of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's like, I saw UFOs everywhere. They're like, there was literally nothing in the sky.
Yeah. So apparently the Snallagaster does have an enemy, though, which you don't hear too much about when it comes to cryptids. They don't really...
As an arch rival?
Yeah.
This is awesome.
So the Dueo, or the Maryland Wolfman, is something that we'll cover in a mini episode or something for Patreon later. I might do it when we record for Patreon sometime soon. But it is a bipedal creature, and it has the features of a wolf, but it walks around like a person. Kind of like, a lichen or something.
Or a werewolf.
Which are two different things.
Yeah, there's a difference, so...
There are reports that these two creatures have come to blows during the early settlement area.
It's like Godzilla and King Kong.
Yep, that's so, things might have an enemy there. Supposedly, it died in Washington County when it was overcome by the fumes of a moonshine still. It fell from the sky into...
We are the virus.
It fell from the sky into a 2,500-gallon vat of alcohol. The story is explained off as revenue agents, George Dansforth and Charles Cushwa, coming in and destroying both the vat and what would have been the carcass of the beast itself. They were so startled by it, and it freaked them out. They exploded 500 pounds of dynamite under the still to destroy everything. The Baltimore Sun reported separate little incident of the Snallagaster's death in November 1932. In this iteration, it drowned in a vat of whiskey mash on a Baltimore County farm. Federal prohibition officers inadvertently blew it up before the carcass could be examined.
So just conveniently, during Prohibition, everyone's like, yeah, it just fell into this barrel that I then blew up.
Yeah. Funnier still, Prohibition ended soon after, which is like, what are the oods? You know what I mean?
Clearly the Snallagaster had stuff to do with it.
If it's all just made up to sell papers, it is what it is, but it's still a fun story, I think.
I mean, if a giant creature cryptid fell into one of my stills or vats or whatever, I would probably try and give it away or sell it to a museum and then change my brand name to like Snallagaster beer or
That'd
Snallagaster
be
whiskey, because then you'd be super fucking famous. The marketing takes care of itself.
Regardless of what source article you're reading from, since then there have been no reports of sightings. In 1976, the Washington Post even sponsored a search for the Snallagaster. Unsuccessful, of course. All that aside, who knows if there are more Snallagaster babies out there somewhere, high up, hidden in some mountain cliffs. They're as big as horses, maybe even bigger. Maybe they're hidden as rocks, like stones, like dragon eggs, you know? You never know. It could be.
I think if any of these cryptids do exist, they've learned through time to just avoid humanity and civilization in general because it's just awful for them. So,
yeah, it's true.
Could be a lie, could be real. It's really hard to tell. Kinda seems like BS, but it's convincing when you read about the like early settlers who are just like, yeah, we're dealing with this thing, and that's where the legend came from that may have been exploited in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
So either way,
I think it's a fun story.
It is a fun story. I really enjoyed it. So solid topic.
Adam
Robin.
was a Snallagaster tonight. He kept gassing out the room. Jesus.
I farted twice, and she acted like it was the end of the world. So.
It stank like
it did.
Poop.
She's just being dramatic.
No,
so.
he can't smell it because it's behind him, and I'm behind him.
I could smell it. I just say I can't
You're
smell it.
You're a fucking bitch. You said you couldn't smell anything, you stupid
asshole. I just flinched because I thought I was going to be struck.
Oh my god.
All right. Anyways, before we move on to our next topic, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And we are back. So this week we are back in our office and recording at home again. It was a fun couple of weekends out in Anaheim. Shout out one more time to Jess and Jennifer from the JJ Obsession for joining us on the previous episode, letting us stay in their guest room, which was very gracious of them, and just generally being wonderful and super fun human beings. It's just a joy to be around them, and we had a blast. We absolutely did. But
yeah, check out their Insta.
Definitely. Being back home, though, I really wanted to dig into a haunted location because we talked about some of the university stuff. I was kind of thinking about doing something along those lines. And then traveling again was super fun, and it really made me start thinking of places out there that exist that I'd kind of like to visit or may have been near in the past.
But your topic you definitely don't want to visit, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So with the Saturday stream of Resident Evil Village, I was thinking, and I mentioned it a few times during the stream, that there's a different game that we streamed a while back named Silent Hill 2.
You can actually go and look up those streams if you want to rewatch that.
Which were the game is really old and it definitely isn't the best, so I talked a lot of shit about it. But in general, it's got a good theme and it's creepy.
I like the Silent Hill story.
Robin really likes the Silent Hills. So I couldn't help but think about that and the city that inspired Silent Hill, especially the movie. So that is what I have decided to cover because it has been requested very frequently. So that is what I'm going to dive into. So on the planet Earth, which is our planet, the third rock from the sun, by the way,
God
Robin.
Damn it.
Gets that confused sometimes.
No.
In the country known as the United States, in the state known as Pennsylvania, in the eastern central part of the state, in Columbia County resides a town known as Centralia. It's either Centralia. I'll mix them up every now and then.
I say Centralia.
It's supposed to be Centralia. I'm pretty sure if I say it wrong, I just said it wrong because I don't say it often enough. Don't at me. So Centralia is an old town. It was settled in 1841 and was originally known as Bull's Head. Fun fact, they picked this name because of a tavern that had been built in the area in 1832, and the tavern was named Bull's Head Tavern. So the town was initially named after a bar. That is hardcore. One thing this area was known for, dating as far back as the 1700s. See, I don't do the century thing because I don't want to confuse anyone. Robin just tosses out the century, and then everyone gets confused.
One.
Okay, cool. You don't have to do that when I say 1700s. But dating as far back as the 1700s was large amounts of coal that were in the region. People knew it was there. In 1854, the Mine Run Railroad was built to transport coal from all over the valley. So once that happened, Bull's Head was officially a mining town. For better or worse, that's what it was going to be. Everyone knew that there was coal there, and they were going to extract it. It's kind of weird to think about that in 2021, but having a town that's relatively new and finding a resource like this, your town's economy is fully going to be tied to it. That's how a lot of mining towns all over the country were, especially in the case of the gold rush and in the 1800s. And we talked about it a lot during the cannibal episode. Like, you'd have a mining town, the veins would run dry, they just move along further west, and that was just like sort of a way of life. The mining towns that were on the west coast had one thing in common with Centralia over in Pennsylvania, and it was that the ore being mined is a limited resource. It could run out. So many towns would basically turn into ghost towns because it would run dry.
Yeah.
So I think that was always the source of stress or fear for this town, and they weren't sure what would happen, but I can assure you that is actually not what happens to this town.
Worse things happen to this town.
Eventually, in 1866, the settlement would become incorporated and change its name to the Borough of Centralia. And I think it's technically supposed to still be named that, but they sort of dropped the borough of and just called it Centralia.
Okay.
They do refer to, like, how you say, like, city limits or town limits.
Yeah.
They say borough limits when it comes to Centralia still. So that is when that change was about 25 years after the fact. So Centralia is stated to have been founded by a few different people, depending on where you read. It gets mixed up because of this distinction of when it was settled and who settled it, and when it was incorporated and who did that, because those are 25 years apart. That's a significant amount of time. Alexander Ray was a mining engineer who had come out and relocated his family to Bull's Head when the mines opened up, and he started planning out a village. He literally put pen to paper and created lots of property that could be developed and sold. He planned the roads of the town, the commercial and the residential districts.
Oh, wow.
The whole 9 yards. So when the town wound up being incorporated, it had around 1,300 residents, like right off the get-go.
Well, that's a lot.
It is a lot, especially for 1866.
Little startup.
Many folks refer to Ray as the founder of Centralia. He was well known and, from what I can tell, well liked for the most part. And while the main piece of craziness attached to Centralia is to come, here's a bit that I did not know about. So in 1868, 2 years after it was incorporated, Alexander Ray had traveled to the nearby town of Mount Carmel. He was conducting some business, got it taken care of, and started heading home. On October 17th, 1868, Alexander Ray was on his way home driving his buggy. While driving home, a group of men showed up and ambushed his buggy. Alexander Ray was murdered during this attack, and his money was stolen. No one was quite sure whether it was a murder with money attached to it, or it was a robbery gone wrong. The motivations are entirely unclear, and even though I'm about to tell you some more stuff, to this day, it's not quite exactly known.
Wow.
Several men would be arrested and charged with murder pretty quickly after this happened, but they would all be acquitted and walk free. The case would not be followed up on for another 8 years. In 1876, a man named Kelly the Bum, in quotation marks, would confess to the murder, and he would implicate his fellow murderers, Patrick Hester, Patrick Tully, and Peter McHugh.
PPP.
All four men were part of a group called the Molly Maguires. The Molly Maguires were an Irish secret society that operated in Ireland, England, and the United States. Their motivation for killing/robbery, in general, was pretty ambiguous, except when it came to some certain things. They got their hands into local government and local democracies or local clubs as a secret society and try and take it over and find a profit from it.
Like Hydra?
Sure, like Hydra. But the group as a whole became increasingly violent in the 1870s and wound up having 20 members executed by hanging between 1877 and 1878 because they were becoming very well known for a secret society as very, very violent individuals who you did not want around. 4 of those who would be executed from 1877 to 1878 were the men who murdered Alexander Ray.
Wow.
The Molly Maguires activity was really prevalent in Centralia, and they would attempt to start a union there to improve working conditions and hours and wages and things like that, all the things that a union tends to do.
Okay.
When people started to ask, well, how do you intend to do that? Basically, what they would do is beat the shit out of them. If that didn't work, they would burn down their houses.
What?
And if that didn't work, they would just straight up murder them.
Okay, I was like, oh, they want to start a union? That's great. And then it's like, oh no.
These were just gangsters that were just trying to get attached to any sort of legitimate business where they could collect money from people, you know? And then they basically started trying to intimidate people into giving them money for protection, which just means protection for yourself from them.
Yeah.
So they don't come back and fuck you up. In addition to this, there is a legend that dates back to 1869. Nice. That during the violence in Centralia, the Molly Maguires had an altercation with a man named Father Daniel Ignatius McDermott, who just so happened to be the first Roman Catholic priest of Centralia. During their interaction, 3 members of the Molly Maguires decided it was the best course of action to beat the shit out of Father Daniel and proceeded to do so.
That's a bad idea. He got God on his side.
Afterwards, according to the legend, and this doesn't sound too godlike to me, Father McDermott was so upset about being assaulted that he cursed the land the town was on because of the violence being spread by some of its people.
Oh my, this is like something out of a movie.
Yeah, part of the legend states that Father Daniel said there would come a day where the only building that stood in the town was the church. And it was called the Church of St. Ignatius, I'm pretty sure.
Give me a sneak peek. Is the church still up?
There is a church still standing.
Oh, wow.
So, he basically comes out and says, like, curse the land, curse everything. The only thing that'll be standing after this curse takes effect is my church. It's also stated, I can't confirm this because I couldn't do a fucking Me23, whatever the name of that stupid, like, blood test site is.
Okay.
It's also stated...
23andMe.
23andMe? I was close.
Or is that a movie?
Oh my god. It's also stated that the descendants of those Molly Maguires who assaulted the priest were residents in the town dating up to the 1980s. So that they had procreated and their children and then their grandchildren and then those people just stayed in the town.
Okay.
So basically the people who initiated the curse were still present for basically everything to go wrong and be blamed. Also, it's a legend. I can't confirm that. There are certain things I can confirm, though. The town did thrive for a while. Up till around, I think, 1910, it grew and grew and grew. There was a bunch of lists of, like, how many houses, how many hotels, how many movie theaters, all this shit that they had, and it just seemed like a really nice poppin' town. It even slowed down slightly, but still succeeded when a lot of the men went off to fight in World War I. But the biggest problem that hit Centralia to start was when the rest of the country also fell on hard times, 1929, when the Great Depression kicked off, when Wall Street crashed. The company that owned the mines of the town shut down 5 of those mines. They basically came in and said, we don't have the money to operate. We don't have the money to pay you.
How many did they have?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's not clear. It seems like all but 1 were shut down. It's possible that all 5 of them were shut down.
Shoot.
That 5 was the cap, the number. But basically they just come in, they block off the entrance to the mines. Like, don't go into our property. You're all fucking laid off. Figure it out.
Is it possible for them to just go down and mine their own coal and just...
Well, let me go ahead and tell you what happens next,
okay.
Robin. While it's unclear if any of those other mines remained open at this time, the locals that were out of work decided that they're just going to be going into these closed mines and extract ore themselves. The problem is that you don't have all the tools you need when you don't have, like, all the equipment from the company to keep going further into the mine shaft. There's a way people do this in mines that have been shut down, so to speak, and it's called pillar robbing. Pillar robbing is where you mine for ore in the pillars that have been left there in the shafts to support the roof of the shaft itself.
What?
So basically, you go as far down as you can. You find the pillar that's there that's from the ground to the ceiling, supporting the top of the rock that's above you from collapsing on you, and you mine that for the ore. And you basically mine it until it collapses.
What the what?
This meant that the network of mines under the town during the Great Depression were very quickly being pillaged and having multiple cave-ins, rendering some points completely inaccessible, and trapping some of these desperate souls in the process as well. So after the recovery from the Great Depression, some of the mines opened, but it was never as successful of a town as it had previously been. The town itself gained control of its own mines in 1950 due to some state legislation passing. They would be able to profit off of the mines and their own natural resources rather than an external company profiting, taking the one thing that they can make money off of, especially if something were to happen like the Great Depression again, and basically putting up a closed sign and saying, get fucked, you can't go in.
Yeah.
So they take control of all of it.
Because they should own their own land.
You figure they would, right?
Yeah.
But things were a bit different back then. So some of the mines would be reopened, but most of them at this point had collapsed due to the pillar robbing. You could still go in, but the good stuff was behind the collapsed rocks, and the only thing that you could mine at that point were the pillars, or trying to start like going in different directions looking for more coal. So they're just like, let's just open the ones that haven't collapsed and we'll take care of it that way. Still at this point, the town had a little over 1,400 people when 1962 rolls around. Now, it takes place in 1962 is not 100% fully clear. However, there's a very good picture of what happened. It's believed that there were two specific sources for the shit show that is about to unfold. This takes place at the end of May. I believe it's May 27th is the first date that gets brought up. To the beginning of June, June 4th, they have some documentation on how they're going to handle the situation. So right around this time of year that we're currently in right now, because we're recording on June 8th right now. In previous years, volunteer firefighters were hired to do something off the books, which would be to clean up the town landfill, which was just outside the borough limits. It is illegal to clean up a landfill by burning it. However, they were hiring them and telling them, just set it on fire and have a controlled burn.
What?
A controlled burn is when you start the fire under set conditions and then you put it out or monitor it until it goes out on its own when it reaches this predetermined circumstance where you're like, that's enough, let's put it out now.
That's how you do sugarcane and stuff like that.
Right. There's a lot of different places that do it. You're not supposed to burn trash. This was illegal. The city council was like, yeah, we're just going to have fucking people do this. We're going to pay them for it. Get the local firefighters. They'll be fine with doing it. And they did it. They had done it in the past as well. It's stated that although the fire was doused in some way after the controlled burn, it was not completely put out.
Is it because it was still burning underneath?
Well, they should have taken care of that regardless.
Oh, okay.
But it's still burning. In addition to this, it's stated from other sources, and these ones are less reliable, but it appears that there are city council documents referring to this mistake. That there was a local trash hauler who had taken a load filled with hot ash and discarded coal and just thrown it into the landfill as well. Not tried to put it out, just toss it in there like, it's a fucking landfill. On top of those two monumentally bonehead moves, the town was required by law to install a fire-resistant clay barrier between each layer of the landfill.
That's smart.
Which they did not do.
Oh, no.
They claimed to have fallen behind on schedule, and the barrier was just incomplete. Like, can you imagine being at your job, whatever you do, falling behind schedule of something that not only do you have to do, but it's required by law it get done. Falling behind is being like, fuck it. And you just leave it undone. You just walk away. And that's exactly what happened here. So there's another theory that there was a fire that started in the 1930s in a different location that had wound up burning underground. And in 1962, during Memorial Day weekend, it finally reached the landfill.
I highly doubt that's the case.
That one was tossed out because there was a bunch of people who had a bootleg mine that they started on their own during the Great Depression that were like, just so you all know, that is Hornswoggle. We've been mining in the area. It would have had to like burn through to get to the landfill for fucking decades, and it's totally good to go. There's no fires down there right now. So they basically just come out of the woodworks, say, hey, we've had this bootleg mine that disproves that theory. Whether it was the fireman or the trash man, that layer not existing has dire ramifications on the town of Centralia in 1962 that would basically carry out and is going to be carried out for the next 250 years.
Oh my jeez.
The fire would make its way through the landfill and collapse deeper into the earth, directly into the abandoned coal mines that were now inaccessible. The fire then started underground and began to spread using the coal itself as fuel. So this abundant resource that when the town was founded, everyone's like, we hope it doesn't run out. That's what our economy is attached to, is now the fuel for the town's demise. This is a problem for sure, but at first it seemed confined to the sealed mines. So when it happened, they were aware of it, but they're like, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. Let's just leave it be. and some time passes. And then in 1979, 17 years later, people of the town started to notice things amiss. A gas station owner, who has another fun fact that I'll tell you about here in a second. You're totally reading my script. A gas station owner was checking the levels of his underground tanks to see how much fuel was left in them, to see if he needed to order his fuel. You would do this manually at the time. Tanks nowadays have gauges on them that you can just like read a dial on and say this is how much is in there. Back in the day, you're going to do it manually. That meant putting a dipstick into the reservoir.
If you guys have never checked your oil in your car,
you
should do it. But that is a dipstick if you guys want it. Like, I know there's
You put a long stick into a tank that holds a liquid and you see how much is left.
Yeah, it's not just a Dalmatian in 101 Dalmatians.
I didn't even realize there's a Dalmatian named Dipstick.
There's one called Dipstick.
Is he like half and half?
His tail looks
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So he puts the dipstick in, pulls it out, and notices something odd. The fuel was hot. Not warm, hot. This is gasoline, by the way. This gasoline is hot. He gets startled by this. He goes and finds a thermometer, figures out how to lower it into the liquid in the tank, pulls it back up after a time, and the gasoline in the tank was registering at 172 degrees Fahrenheit.
What is the smoke point of gasoline?
I do not know.
Okay.
Did not check it. It's 78 degrees Celsius for those of you who don't know what Fahrenheit is. So just because I know this off the top of my head.
No.
And I totally didn't Google this.
We Googled it.
It is 536 degrees Fahrenheit at which gasoline will ignite. So not quite there.
Yeah.
Still dangerously high though.
Right.
So he's disturbed about this, and he has another profession, I guess you could say, vocation. This gas station owner also happens to be the mayor of town.
Wow.
And he brought this up to the rest of the town's attention, letting them know, hey, I think we have a very serious problem.
It's like something from Schitt's Creek.
Now tell me if this sounds familiar, but when presented with this evidence of, hey, we all know this is a thing. We've known this for a while. Now I'm going into my underground gasoline tank, and it's really fucking hot. I think there's something wrong. About half the town was like, we need to do something. And the other half is like, fake news. They're like, doesn't fucking matter. Like, it's not a big deal. There was literally like about half of the town who were not concerned at all. They're like, it's not a big deal. Like, we don't think this is actually causing anything.
It's underground. It shouldn't even be hot.
It shouldn't be hot at all. But they're basically just like, they have like half the town who are just, they don't give a shit. It's like split right down the middle. It's like people that think we need to do something, we might need to leave, and people who think like there's nothing wrong at all. Bury their heads in the sand, fake news, like we're not going to deal with it. So that's 1979. They reached out to state authorities to request assistance with the situation as they were not equipped to deal with this underground mine fire that they had let burn for 17 fucking years, especially one that was literally sealed. And the state acknowledged the issue but doesn't provide much help. There's more going on. They don't see a whole lot of issues happening as a result of it. And 2 years pass. 1981 hits, and another event takes place that causes people to take a little bit more notice. So, this sounds like a nightmare I had as a kid growing up.
The gas station explodes.
No, that's not a nightmare. That's fucking awesome. It's like every action movie you've ever seen. So
have you not watched Zoolander? I don't think it's that awesome.
It was pretty funny, though. A sinkhole opens up about 4 feet wide in the backyard of a resident's home in Centralia. 12-year-old named Todd Dombowski falls into it. Falls in, grabs the edge, and starts yelling. His cousin by the name of Eric Wolfgang runs over, grabs him, and pulls him out. The hole had fumes coming out of it. They're like, this hole smells weird, which sometimes happens. And after the fall and the rescue, they get the adults. They're like, hey, I fell in this hole, and it stinks. So the adults come to investigate it.
What's it smell like?
Let me do the other thing first.
Okay.
The sinkhole was 150 feet deep.
Whoa!
Had he not grabbed on and his cousin wouldn't have grabbed him, he would have died 100%.
Was there water underneath?
No, there's not.
Okay.
It's just straight down into the mine shafts. The authorities were dispatched and they found that the fumes that are coming out of it are carbon monoxide at lethal levels. It is basically a sinkhole that has opened up to the hell beneath the town that is now exhuming this fucking awful gas that will literally kill someone if it is breathed. Like with all issues, the town was still split. Some folks still think this is a serious problem that needs to be dealt with. The other folks are like, who cares? No one got hurt. It's not a problem. It's underground.
You know what's not fair is because there's half the town that doesn't want to do anything about it, they just don't do anything.
Yep.
Even though there's people that are like, we're concerned.
And this decision is going to have repercussions on other people. So the world beneath them is literally on fire, and a large part of the town thought they should just ignore it, or that it literally wasn't a threat. And I would like to give you a side note here to remind you that people sometimes are fucking idiots. The sinkhole becomes a plume of steam and carbon monoxide that's visible. It's literally gas escaping, like you can just see white coming out of it like a fucking geyser. Officials would examine the scope of the fire underground, finally, and determined that the fire would be close to impossible to extinguish, if not completely impossible, and the damage to the land was irreparable, or irreparable, or however you want to say that word. By 1983, the United States Congress approves $42 million, which is $113 million today,
Wow.
for the entire town to relocate. The government's just going to buy them out. The town is boned. It is not going to be recoverable. And most of the folks at this point accept the offer. In 1962, they had 1,400 people. The population kind of dwindles, but it's still above 1,000. When this is offered, over 1,000 of the residents take the deal. Some folks, though, refuse to leave.
I mean, it's been their home their whole lives, right?
Been their home their whole life. Some of them, it's been in their bloodline the entire time since the beginning. And some of them, just out of stubbornness, don't want to go. But most of them were the ones that were in the camp of this was no big deal. This is still no big deal. The government's just coming here to steal my home. That's what's happening right now. And for the folks that moved, their houses and businesses that were abandoned were sold to the government for the money that was offered. They were torn down, and the land is classified as condemned.
Because it's literally on fire.
Because there's nothing you can do. And in most cases, it's in a spot where the air is unbreathable. Like, you just can't breathe it.
Would you say it's as bad as, like, places that have had just radiation wash over them so you can't live there?
I mean, it's just as uninhabitable for very different reasons. Like, if you breathe there, you'll die.
Okay.
If you're in radiation, you'll die. By 1990, 7 years later, only 63 people are still living in Centralia. They're still refusing to leave. New holes had opened up in the ground. The roads had started to split in multiple spots. There were the beginnings of cracks in the ground that glow orangish red, revealing the literal inferno below their feet. Parts of the landscape smoked and emitted carbon monoxide, again in lethal amounts. 2 more years pass. It's 1992. I'm 7 years old at this point. The governor of Pennsylvania has to invoke eminent domain on all property in the borough, condemning all of it. Some folks try to fight it, but they fail. But the residents that were still living there are not forced to vacate. All the property aside from those that are containing people is torn down in the areas deemed condemned. There's still parts nearby.
So they actually tear down the houses.
They basically take down everything that they're able to get a hold of, but there's still parts of the town that are standing. They just don't leave. They're like, hey, we shouldn't leave yet. Like, we haven't had anything bad happen here yet. Like, the fire might be going on still under the town, but this part of the town is safe.
Their energy bills must be so expensive trying to cool down your house.
Signs were put up around the town warning of an underground mine fire and the dangerously high levels of carbon monoxide in the area. And eventually, the fire spreads underground to the land beneath the nearby town of, and this is totally true, Burnsville.
Shut up.
Burnsville with a Y, Byrnesville. Okay. The town was much smaller, but also has to be abandoned and condemned due to this.
How far does it stretch out?
I don't have an exact specification because they're not quite sure.
Okay.
But it gets to this other town, Burnsville. They basically get told, like, hey, because of what happened in Centralia, this town's fucked. You guys got to go. And they all leave. It's a completely abandoned ghost town at this point. So when I wanted to look into where Burnsville was located, I swear to God this is true. It is the halfway point between Centralia and another town named Ashland, which reads to my eyes, Ashland.
Oh my God.
At this point. So the zip code for Centralia gets discontinued in 2002. Instead of the town's mine running dry like everyone was afraid of, there were plentiful enough resources that an oversight and some stupid decisions basically caused that resource to kill the town. Like, when your zip code gets discontinued, like, your town is dead.
Can he not get mail?
I don't think you can get mail there anymore. You have to have a P.O. box at a different location.
Shut up. Wow.
So now there have been a ton of lawsuits preventing the condemnation of abandoned properties, mostly failing. Like almost all of them have failed. They've been condemned. They've been torn down. In 2013, the townsfolk actually won a lawsuit. This is only 8 years ago, stating that parts of the town no longer need to be considered condemned because the fire had, quote, moved. They cited that their air quality levels were on par with Lancaster, Pennsylvania now. So they measured the air quality in the town and they're like, you can't condemn us or you have to condemn all of Lancaster because Lancaster has these samples too.
Is it because Lancaster has like all the smog and that's why?
I don't think they have much smog because I've actually been to Lancaster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
what is it like?
I went there with my dad to purchase something and then we drove home.
Okay.
It's just a normal city. I didn't notice any sort of like industrial shit all around. I grew up next to like East Chicago / Whiting where the oil refineries and the steel mills are.
Yeah.
Like, so I know what bad quality air, like my dad would drive to work and come home and the car would smell like the refinery.
Oh.
And like we'd get in the car and be like, what's that smell? My dad always just saw like, that's the smell of money because that's the smell of his job.
Money actually smells disgusting.
It does smell disgusting. But they win this lawsuit. When they go in there and they say like, here's the air samples from Lancaster. Here's the air samples from Centralia. You guys shouldn't have condemned our shit. So they get paid out. They get paid the property of their value or the value of their property, plus some extra cash. I think something like $130,000. I don't know if that's each or splitting up between all the residents who live there at that point.
How much would your house even be worth?
It's like $202,000 on average, I think, was what each of them wound up getting paid out.
Wow.
So they wind up winning this lawsuit, and things are crazy. So as of 2021, the fire is still said to be burning. Last time it was studied. Scientists estimate that it will likely burn for another 250 years, which I mentioned earlier. There is only one church still standing in town, but it is not Father Daniel's church. That church is gone.
I wanted to believe.
I know you did. One of the graveyards, there's 4 graveyards in town that are all tended to because the folks that are still there believe in honoring the dead. One of the graveyards in town has carbon monoxide vents around it, causing poisonous steam to creep into the air around it. And it looks fucking horrific.
Really? Do you have a picture?
I found one. I can't confirm that it's real, so I'm not going to post it. But I have some crazy pictures, y'all. I can't wait for you to see this. There's a picture for the 50th year anniversary, which took place about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less. And it shows like the cracks of where the landfill were. And it's like someone standing on a volcano. Like it's glowing orange.
Wow.
It is insane. Smoke and steam still rises from the cracked and abandoned Route 61, which led into town, which is like completely out of commission now. It 100% reminds me of the roads and Silent Hill. The map of the town, which I'm going to post, looks like the map in Silent Hill 2, just without the lake. It's super creepy. It's not quite Silent Hill because there's still parts that are considered habitable and now not condemned. Those parts are fairly few and far between, though. As of 2021, the town's population has hit its peak. In the last 15 years or so, because it had been steadily declining, they now have a grand total of 13 people living there now.
Someone moved in?
They had 9, I think in 2019. They got 4 more people that moved in. It's probably millennials moving back in with their parents because we can't afford to live anywhere that's not poisonous. People still go here, mostly to visit because everyone knows they've heard of it. Centralia is the town. It's the Silent Hill town. And they want to visit Route 61 because it's cracked. It's super fucked up. There's air vents that have the carbon monoxide coming out of it.
Does it genuinely look like the scene from the Silent Hill movie where you're driving up to the town and it looks like really...
I've only seen pictures of the actual road, and I will say it has been ruined by humans, as is everything.
Okay.
Because it's fucking covered in graffiti.
Okay.
100% covered in graffiti. The road's all cracked up. It actually got so bad during quarantine because people were stuck at home and everyone's like, let's just go to Silent Hill. Fuck it.
Yeah.
You know, we're all wearing masks. We're super safe now from the carbon monoxide. They were driving up there and it was so bad and there was so much more graffiti that the town decided to cover that section of highway with dirt. So now it's a bunch of mounds of dirt that cover where the highway used to be because people can't leave stuff alone and people can't treat anything not even with respect, with not disrespect. They have to cover it in graffiti.
This is why we can't have nice things.
This is why we can't have not nice things also, because they just make it worse. There are parts of the landfill that still glow, and showing the fire below is alive and well. I will post a picture like that. And one of the last things I'm going to cover is when I mentioned the settlement in 2013, where they won, and they're like, hey, we shouldn't be considered condemned anymore.
Yeah.
There was also an agreement that came out of that, which stated that the residents who currently live there are allowed to live out their lives, and they can pass away, but once they're gone, the property that they own, the land and the homes, immediately revert back to government control via eminent domain. Basically, they were told, like, sure, it's habitable, but you're on top of a fucking mine fire that's not going to go out for 250 years. So once you're done with it, it's done. Like, the whole town's going to be condemned.
Is it possible for them to, like...
dig it out?
Like, cut open the ground, have all the vents and stuff, vent, but then pour water all up in there?
You might be able to do it, but the substantial amount of water you're going to pour into the ground to try and put out a fire that has its source right there. And all the vents you're going to have to dig, which would have destroyed the town in the first place, Yeah. Like, just by doing that, you're going to release all that gas in the town. And you're going to feed fucking oxygen straight down to this fire.
That could cause an explosion.
And they're not even exactly sure, like, how far the fire stretches, except that they know how far the mine shafts supposedly go.
I have heard somewhere that they did attempt to try to put out the fire at some point. But what they did just caused an explosion. And so they're like, okay, we can't do anything anymore.
I couldn't find reports on that. I've seen stuff where people talk about how they tried to put it out. The minutes that I found from the town council, it was basically like, so how are we going to put out the landfill? Because the landfill is still on fire. And that's what they tried to put out. And they're like, this thing's still not going out. Like, we don't know what's happened. And they realized there was a hole in the middle of the landfill that the embers had fallen through. And they're like, oh yeah, like, this is bad. Like, this is totally fucked now. So it is definitely the town of nightmares that you've heard of, but there are people who refuse to leave it. It's like when you watch Dante's Peak and the old lady on the mountain's like, this mountain's not going to hurt me. It's like, it's literally exploding right now, lady. Like, it's raining ash. Are you cool with it raining ash on you?
She dies from acid anyway.
She dies from stupidity is what she died from. So there's still people behind, though, that have made their lives there for the last 40 or so years, and they're still alive and kicking. The last thing I want to say is that we will never know what could have happened with this town had they sounded the warning bells in 1962. Instead of saying, like, who gives a shit? Let's wait until the 80s when things cannot be fixed. We will never know that. But the last thing is that the town was originally called Bull's Head after the tavern. The tavern's owner is one of the other folks that gets credited with founding Centralia. He's credited frequently enough that on the Wikipedia page, he's shown as the founder of Centralia.
Wow.
Even though he found it when it was still called Bull's Head, because he built his bar there 9 years before the town gets settled. That guy's name is Jonathan Faust. Faust, like the play with the character of the exact same name who makes a deal with the devil in exchange for his soul. And then the devil tries to drag him to hell. And that seemed a little bit odd to me when I was reading that. Like, Faust, are you fucking kidding me? Like, Burnsville, Ashland, and Faust are all attached to this town that's literally on top of a, like, never-ending fire.
That's crazy.
Yeah, dude. And then, of course, the murder from the secret society of, like, the guy who founded the town specifically when it was incorporated. So there's all these other angles that I think a lot of people don't cover when it comes to Centralia. And I hope you enjoyed that. And that, my spooky friends, is my topic. So.
Nice. Good job. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. I hope so. And I know there's a lot of people like, oh, you left this part out, or oh, there's this other thing.
There's always going to be something that we don't cover because there's too much to
We have to figure out what the angle is we want to cover on a lot of these things. If you want to share fun facts, that's cool. But if you're going to message like, oh, you totally fucked this up, I think we're just going to delete it. We're not going to read it.
Wow, that's so cool.
I'm just like, I'm not going to read something that's super critical. If you just want to add on to the story, that's 100% cool. But keep in mind, too, I don't put something in my script unless I find at least 2 sources to validate it, sometimes even 3. So sometimes when I find these, like, ghost stories of Centralia, and it's like, I just see, like, one thing from fucking Reddit that I can't even confirm if it's fiction or not, I'm not putting it in my script. So I found a lot more of this stuff way more fascinating than a lot of the stuff that I couldn't confirm whatsoever. So I hope you did too.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. Thank you. I actually really enjoy that topic. I've watched documentaries on it. I find it absolutely fascinating. And like you were messaging me earlier, you're like, I don't know if there's going to be a lot for this topic. I was like, no. The ghosts aren't what's scary. The horror is what's underground. I was like, that's it's the actual reality of it that is absolutely horrifying.
There is so much in this topic by way of legal proceedings that I didn't want to get super bogged down reading like manuscripts and transcripts of like all the lawsuits that took place. They basically came down to this. It's like there's a bunch of lawsuits where people are filing and saying, the government can't tell me what to do. And the government replies with, your town is on top of hell and poison gas is being spewed from the ground. And then they win. And then an appeal comes in where they're going, nuh-uh. And they lose that too.
Oh my God.
But there's other stuff too where they're just like, look, here's some scientific evidence that this part of the town doesn't need to have this happen to it. And then it's just not as like entertaining or interesting. But I definitely want to toss in there that they won in 2013. But they're also told like, and when you die, we're taking it. Like, oh, that's cool. You win, but we're taking it when you're dead. So I would love to hear from someone who still lives there.
That'd be crazy.
That would be amazing. Yeah. So if anyone knows someone or knows someone who knows someone, like, yeah, hit them up through the grapevine. Let them know. We want to know their story and like what it's like to still live there. So
cool.
But that's everything I have for my topic. If anyone has a story that they would like to send us of something that's happened to you, it doesn't have to be about being in Centralia or battling the chicken, dragon, octopus that Robin talked about earlier.
What is it called?
I can't remember. That's why I named it
the
that.
Snallygaster.
If you have a story that's happened, we would love to hear from you. Please email storytime@scaryish.com. You can hit us up on any of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod. And Instagram is @scarishpodcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us on the donation places, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scarishpodcast. And on our Patreon, we have a bunch of different tiers. Tiers start at $1. So for $4, you can get ad-free episodes, which is great. Sometimes we do polls on there. There's like a choose your own adventure. So there's polls that we do where you guys help us choose topics. And a special shout out to our lovely patrons, Jessica, Sam, Ethan, and Marissa. You guys are absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for supporting us. And if you're not into the whole monthly subscription thing, you can go to ko-fi.com/scaryish podcast. All your donations go to helping us keep the podcast going and kind of help us upgrade things as we go along. I know since the beginning, our video for YouTube and stuff has definitely gotten better. Our audio's definitely gotten better. We've upgraded our mics as we've gone along. I mean, we're almost at 4 years now, so... I
was thinking about that today, like how close we are to it.
Yeah.
Like episode 208 is 4 years.
Yeah,
it's a lot of episodes.
We've done a lot of episodes, and we really couldn't be here without all of you folks. And we really appreciate everything that you guys do for us.
Indeed. And yeah, I think that's just about everything that we have for this episode of Scaryish. So, Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and don't fall into sinkholes.
Okay, bye.